What's up, everyone? Today's story takes us into the world of weddings, but this time we're seeing things through the eyes of the florist. And because nothing in this space is ever straightforward, there's a wild twist. The bride went completely off the radar, only to reappear 1 week before her big day, leaving the florist scratching their head. Let's dive in. I run my own floral business, and back in June a bride-to-be reached out about putting together a custom package for her October wedding. We met at her venue, alongside her planner, and I later sent her a proposal. A few days passed before she finally responded, telling me my services didn't fit her budget. Fair enough. Flowers are costly, they don't last forever, and my calendar stays packed because I'm a sought-after florist in a popular tourist area. Bills don't stop, and since reopening after Mother's Day, I'd been handling 2 to 3 weddings every other weekend. Pretty wild considering we were still in the middle of the pandemic. After her budget comment, I tried following up to explain my pricing and how it depended on her actually choosing things, colors, flower types, themes, anything. But she had no plan at all. For context, this was supposed to be a $20,000 wedding, and yet she couldn't make a single concrete decision. Then silence. By the end of July, she resurfaced with a phone call asking if I still had her in mind. Honestly, I hadn't. I asked if she'd thought more about my proposal or finalized any details so we could move forward. She sighed, said she'd get back to me, and I reminded her that I was booking up quickly and she needed to work things out with her planner. From June until that point, I hadn't heard a single word from the planner either. Weddings are chaotic, and COVID had made things worse, so I gave her some grace. But then, nothing again. Mid-August rolled around, and I sent a polite check-in email, asking if she was ready to move forward, or if I could help her at least nail down some direction. Because here's the thing. I don't place orders until I've been paid, period. Still silence. So I went about my life, happily creating flower magic for clients who actually paid and communicated. Then last Saturday, 7 days before her wedding, she called me out of the blue asking if everything was ready. Excuse me? Lady, you never signed a contract, never paid a dime, and never gave me instructions. I'd assumed she had gone with the other florist in town, who, to be fair, also does gorgeous work. So no, nothing was ready. I'd heard from my venue contact that she hadn't given him any direction either. At that point I figured maybe someone got sick, or maybe the wedding had even been canceled. Either way, not my problem. I'm just the florist. But now that she'd popped back up, I knew I had to protect myself. I asked her to email me so that I'd have everything in writing, because I could already sense the storm brewing. She resisted, but I insisted, explaining I was out of the office until Tuesday, September 29th, for personal reasons. I followed up with another email, CCNG the planner, to stress the importance of getting her info in writing. She still tried calling me the next day, but I wasn't budging. I repeated my instructions, email only. Finally, she sent something through, but it was basically the same vague nonsense as before, except she'd added more flowers to the list. Fine, I thought. If she wants last-minute flowers, she'll pay the rush fees. And pay dearly. Had she confirmed earlier in the season, I could have secured her flowers at discounted prices and passed along savings. But at this stage, those breaks were long gone. I drafted a new quote that reflected the reality of rush ordering and late planning. Around this time, the planner finally reached out, though not with much help, just to share the timeline. I shot back an email explaining the situation in detail, making it clear that not only was the bride over budget now, but I also needed full payment immediately, no wiggle room. It was 10:30 p.m. on Monday night when I sent that email, and I knew Tuesday was about to get messy. Still, I felt good about it. I'd finally reached a place financially where I could confidently say no, or even absolutely not, in a professional way. Any other florists ever get ghosted by a bride who still thinks flowers are magically waiting for her? Do you think I should have handled things differently earlier on? Update. Oh boy, nothing could have prepared me for how much my last post would blow up. The support, the humor, and the shared readiness for drama were amazing. Thank you. And as for the bride, well, let's just say the chaos really did unfold. Now we get to the juicy part. The Zoom call is scheduled for 10 a.m., but I'm fully dressed and ready by 8. Makeup on point, coffee steaming in my mug like I'm in some dramatic movie scene. Exactly the energy I wanted to project. First thing I wake up to? A flood of emails. The bride and the planner were firing messages back and forth all morning, scrambling to figure out who had dropped the ball. As expected, I didn't hit reply. Instead, I sat back and scrolled through the chaos with my little arsenal of receipts. The full thread of communication between these two since June, which is when I stepped in. And guess what? After our initial meeting, neither of them mentioned flowers. Not once. 7 emails total between them. 7. Who on earth plans a wedding of this scale with just 7 emails? With my clients, I average 20 to 30 messages, and that's just for flowers. So, before I even join this meeting, I know we're standing knee-deep in nonsense. To make matters worse, they CC'd literally everyone. Venue, caterer, photographer, the band. Sweet mercy. I rang my contact at the venue before the call. Asked if he'd seen any mention of me or flowers after June. Dead silence. That silence spoke volumes before he broke into laughter. When he finally caught his breath, he begged me to go easy on the planner so the bride wouldn't cancel everything. I told him I'd make no promises. Around 9:07, another florist from across town rang me up, laughing so hard he could barely get the words out. I'd given him a heads up the night before about the disaster brewing, and he told me the planner had already called him that morning, desperate to see if he was free for the weekend. He shut her down immediately, said he'd already spoken to me, and even if his schedule were wide open, he wouldn't touch the disaster she'd created. Turns out he has history with her. Apparently she's remarried recently, changed her name, but forgot to update her caller ID. He recognized her instantly. He told me straight up, "Good luck, you're stuck in the muck now." And that's when my irritation shifted from myself to the bride. From her messages, it was clear she thought everything was running smoothly. She believed all she needed to do was approve or decline a few decisions and let her fiancé sign the checks. I started calling around to other vendors just to gather every scrap of evidence I could use. Finally, 10 a.m. arrives. We all log in. Pleasantries are exchanged. Though the bride looks exhausted, the planner looks like she's hanging by a thread. And me? I'm sitting there with my best resting face, absolutely not here to play. Everyone waits for someone to start, so I take a slow sip of coffee, straighten in my chair, fold my hands neatly on the desk and dive in. My opening question. Had the proposal been approved? The planner jumps in first, saying my designs match the vision she curated for the bride, but she didn't think the rush fee, overtime charge, or setup fee were reasonable. According to her, I'd known about this wedding since June and should have been ready, so her client shouldn't have to pay for my oversight. I actually laughed, tongue caught between my teeth, before calmly shutting her down. Non-negotiable. I told her flatly. Then I turned to the bride and asked if she'd made other arrangements. She shook her head and explained that she thought everything was handled back in August when she forwarded my email to the planner and asked her to handle it within a week or two. She apologized for being blindsided and panicked, mentioning her fiancé had already dropped off a check to the planner on September 1st. Money she thought had gone to me. I told her I believed her. Then I asked if she wanted me to resolve this directly with the planner. The bride nodded quietly. Meanwhile, the planner started spiraling, insisting the check had been for the band only. That's when I pulled out my little mountain of paperwork, every message, every note I'd collected over the past 3 days. I told the planner, in no uncertain terms, to shut her mouth or regret it. Her face drained. She knew exactly who she was messing with. I'm the only black female business owner in this industry around here, and my reputation carries weight. Everyone knows I don't play. I asked her how I was supposed to be on retainer when I hadn't been paid a dime and hadn't spoken to her since June. I demanded she produce one shred of proof she ever contacted me, booked me, or gave me instructions. And then I went for the jugular. How was she still working in this town, given her history? Everyone remembers the cancer patient's wedding she torpedoed when she forgot to book the venue. Everyone. I told her flat out I would never work with her again. Any bride she sent me, under any name, would be turned away. Between me and the other florist, she was done. Finished. And I promised every vendor and every bride I came across would hear a warning about her incompetence. The bride sat there stunned, jaw practically unhinged. The planner froze. eyes brimming like she might cry, realizing she was toast, burnt to ash. I leaned back, calm, and let her stew in it. And then I told her, "Go find that check, wherever it is." The bride made it crystal clear that the planner needed to hand over the missing check before the week was over, or else the recorded Zoom meeting would be used as evidence to pursue damages. Since the state only requires one party's consent for recording, there wasn't much the planner could do about it. If the planner took it as a threat, so be it. The bride didn't back down. She told her point blank that this conversation wasn't over. That's when it really sank in. She had completely dropped the ball. It was only 5 checks, but that was more than enough. The bride announced on the spot that she was firing the planner, effective immediately. The planner didn't argue. She just logged off the Zoom call, without another word. I asked the bride if she was okay, and she admitted she was drowning in stress. Her only sister had been sick with COVID, which was why she told the planner weeks earlier to just pick something in their preferred style, and move forward. The bride had assumed the planner took care of it, but in reality, nothing had been done. The planner hadn't even realized the bride had spoken with me directly just last week, because she'd been feeling excited about the wedding again. This whole thing reminded me exactly why I dislike working through planners. Too many middlemen always means things get lost in translation. I told the bride that she was my client, not the planner's, and that's why I'd given her my contact info in the first place. The planner's one job was to keep everything moving along, and she failed. The bride apologized again, and told me she'd take my proposal. She said she'd come by my shop shortly with cash. Once she'd regrouped, talked it over with her fiancé, and checked in with the rest of her vendors to make sure the entire event wasn't falling apart. By around 12:30, she walked into my shop looking like a massive weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She admitted she'd wanted to fire the planner months ago but felt trapped, scared she'd still be charged for no work done, and would have to start all over. She said she had already made quick calls to the other vendors to straighten things out and ensure everyone was properly paid. Finally, a bit of relief. I asked her what exactly she'd said when she fired the planner, but she just laughed, handed me a gift bag from the best wine store in town, and told me that was all I needed to know. She apologized again, thanked me, and handed me the balance plus extra in cash. I counted it while we chatted, and she joked that this would be one for the memory books. I kept my poker face, but inside, I was dying of curiosity. She then asked if I knew any day of coordinators, so I connected her with a friend of mine who had just had a cancellation for that exact date. Not long after, my friend texted me to say thank you for the referral. In the end, everything turned out beautifully. The bride was relieved and taken care of, my friend got unexpected business, and I walked away not only with a generous tip but also a $200 bottle of excellent wine. A total win. What could have been a complete disaster somehow worked out better than expected. I've been laughing ever since, sipping on my little revenge wine during a late lunch. Honestly, it turned into one of the best days I've had in a while. But then came the next twist. The bride forwarded me a text from the planner. Apparently, the planner had found the missing check but claimed she'd misplaced it, and was too embarrassed to admit it, so her plan was to cover it out of pocket, which made 0 sense. Now that she'd found it, she said she'd take it to the groom's workplace because she didn't want to face the bride directly. I was floored. The final update came from my own mother-in-law, who used to be a florist herself. When I told her the whole story, she casually mentioned that the planner had been struggling with drug problems on and off since the 1980s. That explained a lot. Hopefully, she eventually finds the help she needs. What a wild ride. Honestly, I hadn't realized just how much heat florists can catch from brides until this whole ordeal. The stress makes sense. Planning a wedding is a high-pressure situation, but this woman clearly wasn't suited for the job. If her personal issues really were at the root of all this, I do hope she recovers and finds some peace. As for me, I'm just glad I stayed calm, handled my part, and came out on top with some extra cash and incredible wine. Carrying on the family tradition, just like my mother-in-law once did. Feels like a win in itself. But wow, after all that, I know for sure this is not a job for the faint of heart.